Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight Podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. This podcast is all about getting you connected with the vital outdoors. We do that by trying to eliminate the unknowns, by getting you out there more comfortably and more confidently so that you'll actually get in nature more frequently. If that's something that you resonate with, if that's something you guys are passionate about, make sure you hit subscribe and stay tuned for all of the episodes we have. We have been growing the podcast very fast lately. We've had some phenomenal interviews, which you guys will want to go back and listen to. But you're also going to want to be subscribed for episodes to come. In today's episode, we take the team, or most of the team that went on a recent backpacking trip with us in January, and we talk through, maybe it was February, I think it was January. We talked through that trip. It was a hot tent trip. We were testing out some gear. We were pushing the limits on some different pieces, but also it was just a ton of fun. So join us as we talk through what foods we were eating, what gear we were using, the trip itself. Winter is a phenomenal time to get outside. And if you don't winter camp already, well, listen to this podcast because it may encourage you to get outside in these winter months. It's one of my favorite times of year to be outside. It's just a completely different experience. It's quiet. It's beautiful. It's a great, great time. So join us as we bring the rest of the guys in the studio here, and we have a very enjoyable and fun conversation about everything that went on during this trip. Again, if you're not, please subscribe and enjoy this conversation. All right, we've got the crew in here from our most recent trip, minus one, Derek. He's not in here, but really quickly, just going around the room, let's just say your name, say who you are, so that those that maybe don't listen to the podcast as frequently are familiar with you. But we will be recapping a recent trip that we took up to Deer Hollow, where we did some cross-country skiing into an area and then spent the night. The temperatures got down to about -2, -3, and just be sharing that experience. The trip itself was a blast. We did just put out a video on this. Where we filmed it in a different cut, different style that was a lot of fun. You get to just hear some of the jokes and things that are going around. We had a really good time on it. So go watch that video. And this podcast will get deeper into what we're doing, maybe more gear specific stuff, and just more of the details that you guys may care about if you're diehards getting out there often. So with that, let's go ahead and go around the room really quickly. Just name and what you do here at Outdoor Vitals, and then we'll dive into more about this trip. Start with you, Tyler.
All right, I'm Tyler. I'm over operations, and I like to party.
No, you can't say that. I know for a fact you don't party.
I'm Joe. I'm the content creator here at Outdoor Vitals, and I like to party too.
Oh, gosh.
I don't like winter camping. I think we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah, Joe was all smiles on the trip.
All smiles.
Brigham, I'll introduce him. He's our product designer and our single MMA fighter, according to some of the most recent comments on our YouTube channel. I think they said that he looks ready to jump into a MMA ring at any point in time. So, anything else you need to say about that yourself, Brigham?
I guess that covers it.
Caden?
I'm Caden. I'm just the new warehouse guy. I like pretty much anything, but I'm terrible at all of it.
Going to school here, working
Yeah.
part-time with us, so glad to have you on board. And this was your first trip with us, so we'll get into that as well. So, all right, so kind of a breakdown on what this trip was exactly. So we got up to the trailhead at around probably 11 o'clock in the morning-ish, I guess. And we wanted to get in there really early. Historically, we've been really bad at getting out of the office on time on these winter trips, and then we're fighting the clock to get our shelter set up and get ready before we always get these winds that come in at night in the winter, and then you're setting up your tent. It's windy. It's stinking cold. So we wanted to get in there early and have a more enjoyable experience. So we started off at about 11 o'clock and got on the skis and started going. So some of us are really comfortable on skis. Some of us are less comfortable on skis. So how was the ski-in for all of you guys?
So last time I think had been my second time on skis. So we did a similar trip. We have a podcast on it. It's like the Deer Hollow something or other, like basically a year ago. We did the exact same trip, and it went much worse. But
Much worse.
But that time,
Speak for yourself, Joe.
That time was my second time ever on skis. I've only ever cross country skied. I had only ever been in like a place for cross country skiing once when I was a teenager and went around for like an hour, and that was it. And then the second time I had ever skied was the last trip that we went on. And I think the last trip I realized that the skiing wasn't ever really that much of the problem with it. So this time around I wasn't too concerned about the skis. One of the reasons we had to leave early was because we had a bazillion things to film. Not only the YouTube video we were doing, but also a bunch of... We try to get in the field stuff for our products that are coming up or ones that we're currently selling. And we get, obviously, like, if you've ever watched our ads, you can see people from the office wearing our stuff, acting like models, like running around or whatever. And we have to go get those shots. And we knew we had to, like, 4 things to film. So that was another thing where it's like, we're going to be out there. I'm going to be on skis, so I can't move very much at all.
Joe starts
with
taking
the camera.
Joe starts taking normal time to film and timesing it by about 4 when skiing and snow is involved. So
yes,
gets real excited
really,
about it.
Really, every time we're on trail, it does take way longer to film.
It does.
Period.
We always overcommit for what's for reality.
And then I'm always the guy being like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. I think we got to maybe bring it down a little bit. But yeah, I'm glad we left at 11 a.m. We actually got pretty much everything filmed that we needed to film.
It was cush. Really.
Yeah. But yeah, last time the skis were a problem. This time I had one incident with the skis, and that was it. And that incident was right out of the truck as we were going up the stupid berm. Like just a pile of snow coming out of the truck, and I was immediately slipped and fell on my back, and I was not happy.
Started off the trip.
Yeah, started off the trip exactly how I thought the trip was going to go.
Got better from there, I feel like, but
we'll get into it.
Yeah, we weren't laughing at you, Joe. We were laughing
with you,
because I think you were laughing. Couldn't tell under all the layers.
It started with swearing, and then it became laughing.
Yeah, I think Derek in our office, who's not here right now, he's probably got the cleanest mouth of anyone you've ever met, and I think he heard some words out of your mouth, Joe, that he can't unhear. Which I thought was very funny. Okay, so we get skiing.
You can't quite hear it in the video, but you can see that incident. And I think we really caught most of the funny crashes and stuff on the video. So
we did a good job. Good. We've continued to get better at just capturing these trips and running cameras
to Joe
more on.
For putting himself in the video.
It's fine, yeah. I realized when I was editing the video, I'm like, I have to be the butt of the joke in this entire thing.
Well, I felt like I was too, but it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so we get skiing in. The skiing itself was really nice. It was really interesting, though, and it's just a true testament to what it's like to go out there in the winter, which is I kept having these fluctuations of the wind would be blowing, and it would be quite cold, and we'd be covering up our faces, it'd be making sure your hands are covered, and then the wind would stop, and all of a sudden it was like, oh man, you can, like, it's warm, it's really nice, and you'd have like 5 or 10 minutes of that, and the next thing you know, the wind would be blowing again, and so it's a really interesting dynamic going in, but it is just a true testament to, as Brigham put it on a different podcast, the thief of the backcountry is wind. Like, it can just steal heat away from your body so quickly, and it is probably the single, I don't know, like, it's the thing that you don't always count on when you're winter camping, but it is, like, hands down the quickest way to get way too cold, to lose way too much body heat, to put yourself in a bad position. And so, going in, I think just to go on to some of the product side, I think that's really where the windbreaker makes a massive difference. And like what gloves you're wearing can make a massive difference. So I've been using for a while like a liner glove that typically, like the liner gloves I've been using personally are actually have a waterproof membrane in them, but I will use them even with nothing on inside of them just to block the wind, and it makes a massive difference for keeping my hands comfortable, for also keeping snow and stuff from getting gloves wet over time, even from sweating as you're moving, like you don't realize, but you're sweating out there. So yeah, it was a really interesting conditions, I think, going in. Did any of you guys notice that at all?
Yeah, well, and for context, when we got out of the truck, it was 16 degrees Fahrenheit at 11 in the morning.
And it was just under 10,000 feet probably, or like we're like at 9,800 feet, almost 10,000.
Yeah, it was a nice sunny day, but when the wind would come up, that wind chill factor would probably take it down to like what would feel like 5 degrees or so, in the afternoon when we were setting up. So it was pretty frigid cold, even though it was a beautiful day.
Yeah, those dynamics I think are just really interesting, like Tayson was saying, because 16 degrees in winter, and as long as the sun's out and there's no wind, like even if you're just moving like at a slow pace, it's very comfortable. It's not cold at all. In fact, it usually feels like warm. But even when the sun is shining, as soon as the wind kicks up, that really like just changes how everything feels and changes how you have to be more attentive to your clothing and what you're doing and for how long you stop, because if you stop moving, you're going to stop generating that heat, and then the wind's just going to cool you down real quick.
Who had the new? I know you two had the Nebo windbreaker. That's
Derek did.
upcoming.
Was Derek using one?
Derek used one. What did you guys wear? I had the rain jacket. I had the Tusher, like an old version of the Tusher rain jacket, is what I was wearing on the way.
And
in.
you had some wind pants or something on.
I had just some cheap Walmart snow pants for. Yeah, I bought them for like $20. They worked fine. Or rain pants. Rain pants is what they were. And
were you trapping moisture in there? Were you getting sweaty that you could notice?
Not that I noticed. And then under that, I had the Satu pants. So I actually did, yeah. And then it was the rain jacket for me on the upper layer, and then underneath was the Ventus, and then under that was just a regular T-shirt. I'm not even sure if I brought the altitude, but what did you guys? You two. Kaden.
This is gonna sound bad because I actually wasn't wearing very much OV stuff, but I just had like this Iron Man compression shirt and then a jacket from Walmart, and for some reason I was doing pretty okay. But I think I'm just a really warm-bodied person, so.
Yeah, you're related to Derek, our director of marketing, and so we take about half of what you say is real life. Derek is always comfortable no matter what the condition is, even when everyone else is freezing cold, it feels like. So no, it's good though. So just throwing that disclaimer out there. We got to figure out how much of what Caden says we can trust. So we're still filling that out.
Did like the food that Derek liked.
Yeah, we'll have to get to that. That also is a factor here in things. But Tyler, what were you wearing?
While we were skiing, I just skied in my Sawtooth pants and my Dragon Wool hoodie.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't have any layer on top, huh? So you were just getting a little bit colder when the wind would blow and just deal with it?
I stayed back to run the drone, so I was skiing fast. I was putting out a lot of heat, so I never got cold while we were skiing, even when the wind picked up.
Yeah. During the skiing, I hardly ever got, like the next morning, I felt like the wind was a lot colder. And so that was the only time where like a wind would hit me and I was skiing and I was like, oh. But like, I didn't really feel the cold too much until we got to camp. And then with all the snow and the wind there, that was when you had to put on the other layers.
Mm-hmm.
So we ski into camp, we get there, we pick a spot that we feel like a bit out of the wind. And what's interesting, I guess, about this scenario is was there 70 inches of snowpack at the trailhead? Does that sound right, Brigham? I think you were the one that noted that.
A little over 6 feet, actually. So it was like 6.5 feet of snow.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a ton of snow, and the upper layer here in Utah, we have like the saying of like, oh, we've got the best powder on earth. We also have some of the worst snow on earth, I feel like, because it turns to like fine-grained sand that will not pack together. And so we start, trying to pack down different spots, and it worked okay this time, but we've had it where it's not worked. And so, but the snow is so bad that even where you've packed it down with your skis, walking over it, jumping on it, and trying to pack it down, the second you would take your ski off, your foot would just sink straight down like post hole and then create a massive hole in your area.
Yeah.
So it was different in the sense that once we got to camp and we started working on setup, you had to do the entire setup on skis. Like you couldn't take them off to set a stake. You couldn't take them off to navigate anything. I mean, you had to be on your skis the whole time through the setup, which I think I've had to do that like a few times, but it's pretty rare when you can't get the snow to pack in a little bit or enough to, just be comfortably at least walking around your tent site area. But really, I think that comes from when the snow comes down a few days previous. Like if it was brand new fresh powder, like it usually will pack better. But snow is a few days older than when we were showing up, and man, it was, I don't know how to describe it. It's like trying to pack sand together versus snow. So
dry sand.
Yeah.
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 Not a good wet sand for like sand castles. You can pack that down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Powdered
true.
sugar.
Powdered sugar. That's a good. Yeah, there you go.
Powdered sugar. I was thinking brown sugar first. I'm like, no, brown sugars. Yeah. So we had a new shelter to set up, me and Joe. We were pretty dead set on giving Joe a much better experience.
I appreciated that.
We were being mama bear in a lot of ways, watching over his shoulder, trying to help and just make sure that he had a good time because we know of your apprehension with winter camping. So I'd actually purchased a different shelter, this big teepee style shelter, big center pole that's about 7 feet tall. And what that would create then is an area where we could all come and hang out as a group once it's getting colder at night, getting dark. But also it'd create an area where hopefully we could get Joe, make sure he was fully dried out, make sure he was fully comfortable before he got into his sleeping pad, which, I controlled what I could control, guys, but we'll get into that. And
well, it was a hot tent setup, so
right.
It wasn't just a teepee. So that was the point of congregating in there, was to congregate in a warm tent. Yeah,
I mean, and I guess there's a few points I want to note with that too, of just even sealing up that shelter. But we got that shelter set up. It requires a ton of tie points because it's a massive sail essentially. Even though a teepee is very good with directing wind off of it, it's still just a huge shelter.
It's probably like a 15-foot diameter across.
Something like that. I mean, I think they call it a 4 to 6 person shelter. And then with the stove, it's like a 3-person shelter. So it's big. It's big.
I think you could fit more than that.
How can you stack them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was watching because I was editing one of the videos together where you were talking about this, and you were like, "This is a 4-person shelter," and I'm thinking while I was there, I was like, you could put 2 people where I was at. You could have put 2 people on the other, like on the like a 90-degree angle from me, and then across from the stove, you could put another 2 people, and then honestly, like if you didn't care that you had to step over people, you get another 2 people. You could probably get like 8 people without a stove in there.
If you really wanted to, you could. It's
big.
It's a sizable shelter.
Yeah.
The goal was that when you go on some of these winter trips, though, it's not always fun, especially when you got a bigger group. When it's like, all right, it's 6 p.m., the sun's down, it's freezing cold. Let's go into our shelters, right? Because even sometimes setting up a fire, if there's any wind, like you can't really even get warm around a fire. Like there's just too much wind. So that was our scenario last year. Is we built a fire and we sat around it for not very long before everyone's like, yeah, this isn't working. Like we're all going to our tents.
Well, once the fire has sunk 2.5 feet down into the snow, then it can't even vent anymore.
It just starts dying.
Yeah, so
can't get oxygen.
Yeah, it's not a great situation.
Yeah, so this time it was, all right, let's get this shelter where we can all hang out, dry out, cook and eat together, and then go to bed at more of a usual time, which was a lot of fun. It worked really, really well. But So we're getting shelters set up. We get that all done in the daylight, which was super nice. Really enjoyed that. I probably went into the shelter too soon because I'm like, well, I've filmed the videos I need to film and I've done everything I need to go. I'll just go hang out in here. But in the meantime, Caden and Tyler, you guys were out there skiing and having a good time. Tyler, you got to, did anyone fall besides you on that tree, or was there crashes or anything to note with skiing?
That was my first time ever downhill skiing.
Ever? Mm-hmm. You've never skied in your life?
Only snowboarded. I've snowboarded a ton.
Okay.
But
I was going to say, that's really surprising to grow up here and not do winter sports, but if you snowboarded, that makes sense.
A beard full of snow on one of them. So.
That was my best part about the video footage we have of it.
Yeah. It was fun. Good way to keep warm. Just keep climbing up steep hills.
Yeah. So we did a good job, I think, getting some firewood prepped. Anything else to note about just setup and I don't know, anything before we...
Last time Brigham dug a huge pit
Huge.
And put his hot tent in there. This time you had your hot tent. You decided not to build the pit. And maybe you can tell the podcast audience, like, what went into the decision-making last time versus this time? I'm curious.
Well, the last time I was worried about, I just thought it would be easier to anchor stakes in the ground versus the snow, which, there's simple methods of doing it in the snow, but last time I started digging and I had spent enough time digging before I realized that it was a waste of time, then I just felt like I should just finish the job and then finish digging. So it's like the only time I've ever dug my tent into the ground, but this time it was like a no-brainer. There's probably more than twice as much snow, and you don't need to dig to the ground. So this time was really my default method versus, any other time I choose to dig.
I feel like if you can get like a 2-foot stick, you can anchor a stake quite well.
That's all I do
in that
is
snow.
like generally just try to cut like 20 to 24 inch sticks, and that's the snow stake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, setting up that big shelter, I think we needed 16 tie points. And so we had just a bunch of sticks, buried in the snow, and it worked really well. Even in that snow that's just powdered sugar,
And some intense wind that we got.
I think, one thing, we did get some intense wind, which I want to get into. But I think one thing to note that I've seen over and over again is there's different types of stakes out there, right? Like there's fatter ones, and there's snow stakes too, which can work, and there's spiral ones. But what seems to trump everything every time for me is stake length. So, for these, obviously we're breaking, 2-foot long tree branches and then using those as our stakes, and they can go deep enough that they can really get a hold in there. But the same principle really applies even for when you're staking into dirt, right? So that's why for us, through the testing and whatnot that we've done, it makes way more sense, especially with a trekking pole shelter, when you completely rely on those stakes, which you really rely on stakes in every shelter, which to me is a myth that people kind of complain about, like, oh, you have to. Anyways, but there's a little bit more of a importance to having those stakes set very well with the trekking pole shelter. And so recently we just released a nearly 9-inch stake. It's like 8.75 inches long of an Easton aluminum stake. And that's the stakes that I've been using for the past 2 to 3 years, about 3 years actually. And they've been phenomenal. And they're not the fattest, they're not spiraled, they're not whatever, but they are long and super, super light. And I have had incredible luck with those. Literally don't remember having a stake pull out on me ever with those. And just been there. Anyways, just think about that. When you're going to stake stuff in, the length of that stake to me, in my experience, matters way more than any other aspect of the stake. Maybe I will say the caveat with that would be those like shepherd hook titanium stakes that are like, have a diameter of I don't even know. They're just super skinny, right?
Like a nail.
They're like a nail or as thick as a piece of cord. I have not had good luck with those. Those are too skinny for
how long they are.
For kind of how long they are. Like I've bent them. I've struggled with them a little bit, but I don't have a lot of experience with those, so I can't talk too much.
Well, I mean, honestly, if they're long enough, like as long as the cord will stay attached to that, like that's still like really more effective than, let's say, like a 6-inch V-shaped stake. Like if you had a 9-inch nail stake, it would be more effective. Like the length of the stake into the ground has like the highest impact on holding power.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and then just one last, I guess, plug here, since this podcast is sponsored by Outdoor Vitals, is just like getting stakes in the ground with those trekking pole shelters is really important, which is, again, why we put massive amounts of lead on all of the corners to help you get the stake into the ground in the right spot or be able to move the stake enough. I think that's one of the things that I see happen the most with freestanding tents, is a lot of times, or just any tent, but like on a freestanding tent specifically, a lot of times they give you like a 3-inch little diameter of where you can get your stake in the ground. Like that's as much cord as they give you or webbing as they give you. We're giving you like 16 or 18 inches, and then you can spin that, in multiple directions. So you have a massive amount of space to be able to get those stakes in the ground, which really matters. So stake length and then having the room to get the right placement in.
I'm having flashbacks to camping pre-Outdoor Vitals and having freestanding tents, not staking them, and either like it wasn't a very high wind night and you would just put all your stuff in there and that would weigh the tent down enough,
right.
Or if there was a lot of wind, you go find boulders and you put them inside the tent in the corners. See, that's ultralight. You don't have to
it also works.
Carry the stakes with you.
I thought you were going to say you're going to put the rock on your stakes, but no.
You
put them right in there.
Inside.
At least did you do like the old Native American, heat the rocks up first?
No, that would have been probably smart if it was winter camping for sure. But I think I've done that a lot. I can't even. Yeah, the stakes when you're a kid or a teenager, even like they seem like such a chore. Just stick things in.
People get lazy with them. They bend them because they're just sloppy. Standing on them all crooked, and it's true. That's true. All right, so tangent over. We had like 16 sticks holding down the corners of this massive shelter, and pretty much we got everything done. We got climbed into there, and we crowded. Well, there's 6 of us that were in there, and it was nice. It was comfortable. Like we're hanging out. We're out of the wind. There's an immediate. Off. Yeah. Shoes are off. We're drying out our socks, drying out our pant legs. And there's just an absolute immediate warmth value to getting out of the wind. So just getting in the shelter, but then also to have that titanium stove in there. Obviously putting off heat is another factor that really, really helps with that. One thing though, that I was just thinking about was remembering, after we'd been in there a while, I think we'd eaten a little bit. We went back out to get more stakes or more firewood.
Yeah.
And as soon as we went out there, I mean, it was windy out there. And I was out there maybe 5 minutes before my fingers were numb. I was like, my body heat itself was pretty like starting to dip a little bit, but really just my fingers were getting so numb, grabbing onto the sticks, breaking them off trees. And that conductive heat loss of holding on to the branches, and I actually had to like ball up my fists inside of my gloves and just kind of like tuck them under my arms and just kind of move around for a minute to warm them back up because it was so windy. But when we were out there, one of the things that we were noticing inside the shelter is that we were still getting like enough of a breeze in there that it wasn't getting nearly as comfortable as we'd like.
I was shivering inside the shelter with the thing on.
Yeah. So we ended up sealing off the corners of the shelter more. And when we came back in, and it was way better after that, just by making sure that we kind of had some of these gaps. We had a big gap around the door especially, so we kind of sealed that up, and then it was significantly warmer.
Yeah, you guys had worked to pile snow, because I was inside the tent doing nothing. You guys had
we didn't notice.
Worked to pile snow up around, like you say, the corners. It was pretty much you buried the tent outside of the
I did the entire perimeter.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler.
Yep. I did it on. Well, I just stole Brigham's shovel probably while he was in the middle of using it, and then I did my tent, and then I did the big tent, and then I went back, and I was really cold after that. That wind chill was easily putting it below 0 degrees, like for it would sap the warmth out of you so fast. So if you didn't have layers that would really cut the wind, you had no chance of staying warm, so.
That way it was actually a hot tent, though. When you got in the big hot tent, that was...
I think we ought to explain that
nice
stove.
warm
We also, I
tent.
will say, I think the first hour or two we were in there, we were pretty inconsistent with keeping the thing stocked.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were just, it would be warm, so then you'd feel comfortable, you'd get relaxed, get into a discussion or joking around, and then you forget, and then a couple people start shivering, and then you realize you got to restart the fire a few times. I think after we came back in the second time of getting firewood, I think we were much more consistent about keeping wood, just feeding that stove.
Well, that first half hour, me and Derek were just stoking it and realized the dampener was completely closed. And we're like, this thing sucks. It can't even start a fire in it. But I think for someone who has never backpacked with a titanium stove, that stove is a pretty unique little setup. It's not a one solid piece stove. It packs flat, so it's like an inch thick by 12 or 14 inches by 8 or 9 inches, something like that. And so you have to unpack it and then use the bolts and stuff to make the sheet metal make a box, and then you have to roll out the flue and turn it sideways and put some little things on it. So it's pretty cool how much it packs down, but it still takes some finesse to keep it working good. You got to pay attention to what the dampener's doing. You got
the dampener is the biggest one that gets changed, because sometimes unintentionally, or it's windy or bumping it, can kind of spin the little flue dampener in there. And so me and Joe learned about that, which we'll get into in a bit. But yeah, it's a phenomenal stuff. But yeah, you do sometimes have to pay attention. I will also say that after he came in the second time with more firewood, I was like, we got enough firewood, let's burn it, versus in the beginning I'm like rationing just a little bit more.
I swear every time I use my hot tent, I never use all the wood that I get. And it's like, how many times do I need to do it to learn to just burn the dang wood?
Yeah.
Not try to be so conservative, because I'm always conservative minded when it comes to anything in these more austere conditions in the winter. And so I'm always in the back of my mind I should have a surplus. And but in hindsight, I'd rather just burn it all.
Yeah.
Well, this time I got a whole load of wood while the big tent was still being set up. I'm like, this will burn for a while. And then I go and get more wood, and all of that wood is gone because they'd used it for stakes all the way around the tent.
There was the wood.
We needed
pile.
a lot.
We needed the stakes.
Yeah. So we're hanging out in there, eating some food, some of it good, some of it bad. I won't name drop anything here, but we did try some new meals out that were not phenomenal. They've got some other meals coming, though, from that brand that I'll be excited to try this summer. Some pro packs or something like that. So, yeah, we'll keep you in the loop. We'll try to continue to add food to the Live Ultralight membership, that gated area where you can get food at discounts and with rebates. Yeah, tried some food. I actually accidentally brought a dessert meal that I thought was an entree. I thought it was mango sticky rice with chicken. It was not. It was mango sticky rice with nothing. And then I saw later that it had dessert across the label. So I ate a little bit of that, and that was all right. And then I had a different meal. But I guess probably to talk about one of the points that we were doing with this whole trip, or with the video that was specifically that we filmed, is we wanted to talk about the tip or the hack or whatever you want to call it of eating a lot of calories before going to bed, especially on a winter trip, to stay warmer throughout the night, so your body has the fuel to burn throughout the entire night, because it takes more energy for your body, more calories, to keep body temperature up when it's cold than when it's hot. And so the way that we were doing that essentially was eating a lot of food and adding butter to basically everything I ate. So I added butter to the entree, and I don't know if it ruined it. I don't think that's what ruined it, but I was not a fan of it, and I did not eat very much of it. But I passed it around. So what did you guys think of that meal?
Well, I'm a college student, so, and I'm related to Derek, and so I liked it. I think it was in the office with Tyler the other day, and he said that college dudes just have a seafood diet. And he said that they just seafood and they eat it. So I thought it was pretty good. But
I used to think I was that way, but maybe I'm slowly
You're becoming picky.
becoming more picky. But I mean, there was times when I lived in other parts of the world when I would eat anything. They'd eat weeds off the ditch bank and chicken feet and chicken head soup and all sorts of things. But maybe I'm growing up. I don't know.
We're getting old. I didn't like it.
Yeah, it was not great. But we followed that up with some really good food. So, all right, Brigham's got something to say here.
No, I was just saying I was not about to eat 3 tablespoons of butter right before I was going to try to go to bed. And I think my method of, 3 or 4 Reese's Cups and 3 or 4 Snickers it worked pretty well.
It's the easier
It
solution.
was very risk-free.
I brought peanut butter M&Ms, like
Yeah, that's a good
almost
choice.
exclusively.
A big bag of them.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
bag of them. I counted up the calories. I'm like, yeah, this is about right for today. And then I had that, and I think I had some snack food on the way up. I had some Pringles, I think. And
Did you brought an entree though? Like you brought a meal? No.
yeah, I brought a backpacking meal.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was too cold. It was before you guys had sealed the tent. So like, even though it was in there for 10 minutes, like by the time I ate the backpacking meal, it was like lukewarm. It was
Well-
so bizarre.
I only wait like 90 seconds max to eat my meals usually.
Ugh.
I don't wait the whole 10 minutes.
Well,
I didn't say anything about it. I didn't want to complain about one more thing on the trip.
Well, what can we learn from this? If you were to have taken that meal and maybe popped it inside your backpack or wrapped it in a jacket or
Or
something
just
that
put
could
it on your
insulate.
pad.
Yeah.
Because that's all I did. And I wait the full 10 minutes before I eat mine. And it was plenty
But
warm.
sticking it in the
I don't
snow or on
remember-
top of the snow or
I don't
whatever.
remember
can
if
make
I
it-
stuck it on top of the snow, if I just had it on top of the little liner that was on the ground.
We'll have to go back to the footage.
I don't know, but yeah, that surprised me that it, like, even though it was boiling water in a sealed container, that by the time I got to it, it was like half cooked and lukewarm. So yeah, I did eat that. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. The peanut butter M&Ms helped afterwards, but
Yeah, I'm way more conscious in the winter about putting my meal in a place where it's not going to get too cold. Because I'd rather it stay super hot for the 5-10 minutes I'm waiting, and then when I open it, steam rolls out and let it cool off at the pace I want it to cool off. But that way you for sure get it cooked. So there's, there's people that make koozies for pots and all sorts of things for this exact scenario. But I just find that as long as it's fully sealed, I'll stick it, sometimes I'll just stick it in like the opening of my backpack or on top of my backpack, or I'll take, if I've got a jacket sitting there, I'll just kind of set it in or around the jacket to seal it up. And,
something to insulate.
and
yeah.
it'll stay really hot and do better for you. But
That's a good example of that conductive heat loss we're talking about.
yeah, it's a powerful thing. So we had meals. We had a backcountry foodie meal that Tyler prepped. So maybe talk a little bit about them. And what they're joining us with. So
Yeah, Erin from Backcountry Foodie was a registered dietitian who decided she wanted to hike the PCT, and she was also an ultra runner. So going out onto the PCT, she was feeling like she had no weight to lose. A lot of through hikers go out and I can lose 20 pounds, no problem. She didn't feel like
they
she
really
could do
mean
that.
40.
Yeah, she also didn't feel like she would ever live it down if she went out there and didn't have the food figured out for a big, long trip. So she got her food plan dialed. She started helping people with it on the trail. And after she finished the through hike of the PCT, she never went back to work because she just had enough people asking for help with trail food that became her livelihood. So she's got an awesome website that helps you do meal planning and has a crazy amount of recipes, and you can sort and filter them by diet or calorie or ingredients. And so
I would say one of the coolest things is the packing list aspect.
Yeah,
So
for
like you
sure.
can pick meals and it can literally give you what you need to buy at the store, which, I mean, especially if you're through hiking, that's huge too, because when you go into town, you just know exactly what you need to grab. But it's important for any, hiking, because that's always how it is. You get to the store, you always forget something, and especially if you're going to be making meals like she does.
Yeah, exactly. So, she reached out to us and was excited to try to collaborate on some things, and we're starting with her collaborating on the OV100. So she's sponsoring the 100-mile challenge, and we've just been wanting to try her recipes. So I used her awesome little tool to do like this brownie batter recipe that she has, and I just went in there, found it, clicked 6 servings, hit the shopping list, and it made it super simple to do it. So I prepped that, and we took that out on the trail, and we were doing the video about adding calories to stay warm. So we added butter to it, and that was really good.
It's delicious.
It was great.
It was delicious. Yeah. Although Brigham did get me a little nervous as we were going along that I might be eating too much butter, and so I got a little more conscious, but I added a slab of butter to my brownie batter mix.
What do you mean by too much butter? What does that mean?
Worried about it lubricating the pipes.
Anything in excess, especially when it's fat and greasy,
to
like
go to
lubricating.
The bathroom in the middle of the snowstorm like I had to. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that really sucked. That was really cold.
Just Joe's luck. Just Joe's luck.
Did you get anything on your skis?
No. Come on.
It's tricky.
No, I had been afraid of that. I've been training for a half marathon recently, and I changed my entire diet. So like around this time last year, I was doing like a no carb thing. Everybody was yelling at me about it.
Freaking
Look
Joe.
at Brigham's face right now.
He was backpacking in a 2-pound meat stick.
That was great. It was great.
It was? I thought you froze.
That time.
That's why we did the calories this time, so you understood it.
All right. There's plenty of calories in those things. But now I'm on a diet where like I'm eating basically all day.
Popcorn.
Like a lot of protein.
Our office smells like nothing but popcorn.
I do
every day.
I do eat popcorn for like.
He doesn't share with anyone.
During work, I do eat popcorn.
That's hunger suppression, right?
Yeah. So that, and then later I can eat the higher protein stuff and just go to bed on that and not feel like I have to eat more. So I have been able to control my weight because every time I start running, I did this last year when I was like starting to train for the Highline, and I was just trying to get into shape. I start running and my appetite goes like crazy. So yeah, popcorn is super helpful. Plain popcorn. I got a little popcorn popper thing where I can do it without butter or anything like that. And then
you put spam on it.
I spritz a little bit of
Pam,
not spam.
of a little bit of a little bit of vegetable oil on there, but it's like the spray vegetable oil. So it's like
butter flavored.
It's like 10 calories added to it, but it's not nearly as much as I would if I had 2 tablespoons of that inside of the popcorn. So, but yeah, I've been doing that. But with the diet that I have, I go to the bathroom all the time now. And I was terrified on that trip. I was like, I know it. I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. And I did. And I did have to go to the bathroom. It really sucked. I like tried not to eat that day until the Pringles in the car just to like try to control it. It was stupid.
We all thought it was hilarious because it was already dark outside and the wind was going crazy. And so we're just sitting here in the tent, and then a huge gust of winds come, and we just hear a scream in the middle of it, just coming from somewhere distant.
I don't know if it was actually that distant from your tent.
It wasn't that far. I wasn't willing to go that far. 6 feet of snow, you know.
I heard recently that it's a Diamox, like the altitude sickness, that can also give you the runs. So,
that's not
I heard a horror story on a different podcast that. So beware of that too. All right, so Joe makes it back in the tent. We're all eating brownie batter and our food. The other thing that we had that was amazing was we made hot chocolate. This is probably your best. Like I would do this every time. like no matter what I'm eating, whatever, like I would just add this, which was just a hot chocolate, just an individual Swiss Miss packet, and then I added a slab of butter to that. Me and Tyler had that, and I mean, it was probably, I don't know if it was like the best, but it was like top 2-3 cups of hot chocolate I've ever had in my life. And there's no milk in it. You know, like usually you're adding milk or creamer or this or that. Nope, just add butter, and it adds the cream to it. It adds the flavor to it. It is so good. So dang good. So if you can, I don't know, maybe what I need to find is probably those little individually wrapped butter, like
the little ones you get at the restaurant.
Yeah. I need to start pocketing some of those.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And then for hot chocolate, just throw those in a Ziploc bag, and you've got one per hot chocolate little baggie you've got, and it was amazing.
When Tayson and I are out there, whoever has the most mayo packets left is like
King.
the cash king, because the mayo becomes very valuable on day 4 and day 5 when you're craving salt and
satisfying
fat.
on day 2.
It is.
And so
If you guys were smart, you would take extra mayo and start charging me for it on trail. Like when I don't have enough.
I did last time. Like you charged me for golf balls. Yeah.
I don't remember what you charged me, but it probably wasn't enough because I would have paid anything, I think. I was
Put it
so
on
hungry.
my golf ball tab.
It's true. So we had a lot of food. It was really good. What anything else happened that night that's worth noting? We had some excitement with the chimney. You can see that on the video.
I wish I did not stop filming to save myself. I wish I had
barely
kept filming.
stopped. It wasn't.
It
bad.
wasn't barely. No, there was like 2 minutes in there.
2 minutes? Was it?
Totally gone.
I think it was 2 minutes.
Felt like it was
because
nothing.
it swung back and forth.
Well,
we were
I mean,
like this.
yeah.
We're like, whoa, hold the tent back. Like there
did
was a
have
whole
to.
bunch of things going on.
Actually, I did want to ask Brigham. In the video, you say that's the value of having a leather palm glove because the chimney landed on your glove. How did it hit the glove? I'm confused.
I was laying out my gloves. They were palms up.
And they were
And I had-
on the
and
wood
they're leather.
pile.
They were right next to the stove.
Yeah.
Oh, so when it swung, it bumped
So
into it.
like came right off the stove and landed on my glove. And if I had them palms down, it's just nylon. It would have melted like a giant cookie cutter hole right through my glove. But
Yeah. So what had happened is the stove had dropped maybe 1 or 2 inches from heat. Kind of the snow was melting and settling underneath it, and the chimney pipe was bound up on one of the. It's got these little wire ties that go around the chimney to hold its shape, and that had kind of bound up on where it was exiting the tent. And so what that had done is it had slowly been separating those two pieces until finally we had this massive gust come through, and it just pulled the chimney right out of it, and it started swinging around.
And at that point, we had the stove like glowing red hot. Like we were keeping it real warm. And so then this glowing red hot stovepipe just comes like spinning around the tent, like flying like
It
right
did.
Hot
face
potato.
height. Yeah.
That was pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
because you can't like grab
Can't
it.
block it.
Yeah, we're like
Burn
trying to
your
grab
hands.
sticks and
I've
rocks
watched Darren on our team literally brush his down jacket and just touch the chimney, and all of a sudden we were like, "Whoa, is it snowing in here?" Because down just started flying around the
You
tent.
smell melting plastic.
You could smell the plastic. You could smell melting on the thing. But I mean, that's all it takes with those titanium stoves. They get so hot, and when you're dealing with lightweight gear, lightweight nylons and stuff, it just takes one little brush and it'll melt right through it. So, okay.
How many did you check the scale the next day? By the way, after all that butter, I'm curious.
If I gained weight,
Yeah,
That fast?
that's like an extra. That's like an extra like 1,200 calories or something.
yeah, but
I'm
I'm told
curious.
I'm told you have to eat 10,000 calories in excess to gain 1 pound for your body to retain 3,500 calories, which is a pound. So
With what output? Like
yeah. I mean, I was wishing that we were going farther than 3 miles on the skis, because I have been cutting weight and stuff, and I was like, I didn't work out that day because I didn't have time, and so on and so forth. And so I'm sure that it was like I was in calorie excess, but it wouldn't change the scale in a day. What I find changes the scale, and what I'm always amazed at, is I can fluctuate my body up to 7 pounds with bloat and water weight. So, in fact, just 2 weekends ago, weighed in on a Friday at like 203 pounds. Got back after the weekend of just binge eating or on vacation essentially, and just eating and bloating and whatever. Weighed in on Monday at 212. So I have fluctuated that much weight.
Yeah.
You know, I dropped the next day. I got back to like 208 and then 206, and I was able to pull that back off pretty quick. But I can, like at my size, my frame, I can swing 5 pounds of water and bloat weight like easy.
Yeah.
Really easy.
No, I believe it. The other day, I was telling you, I weigh myself every day at the gym, not because I'm trying to lose weight or gain weight. It's like
It's a great
that's
habit.
like a really effective way of like keeping track that I'm properly hydrating every day, because I can always tell when I'm dehydrated because I'll be like 2 to 3 pounds light, and I haven't done anything with diet or any change, and so I like to be like plus or minus 1 pound, and that way I always know like I'm consuming a consistent amount of water and properly hydrated.
I read once that there was a study done that people that weigh themselves every day are significantly better at managing their weight, even if they're not managing it actively. Meaning, but by just like what Brigham's doing, by weighing in every single day, and you realize, oh, I'm up 3 pounds, you just like subconsciously will eat a little better that day versus stack on another bad day of eating. So that habit of weighing yourself every single day is a fantastic habit, and it's proven in studies to help regulate your body weight.
I've weighed myself every day for like 2 years, and then I put the median. I do physical planners. I can't do the digital crap that everybody else seems to do, like
You're
the
fired.
Google Calendar and stuff.
I'm old, not digital either.
I can't. Well, I like if I get something
like my
done.
wife.
If I get something done, I love the movement of the pen against the paper as it scrapes across the thing. Like that's just like
Check mark.
Yeah, the physical movement of that. But I got my yearly planners for like the last 4 years. I'll put in the top right corner of every day, I put the weight, and then at the end of the week, I put the median weight of the whole week, so I can see if I'm like trending up or trending down throughout the weeks. And then what I've started doing over the last like couple months is every Sunday I measure my waist too, and I put that number in the corner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's an app for that, Joe.
getting obsessive about it. I'm sure there's an app for it, but I'm sure like to get the whole thing, I have to pay $3 a month for this like
MyFitnessPal
app to give
has
me all
been
the
my
stuff.
favorite tool because I can track calories in it. I can do weigh-ins as much as I want. I can track water if I want, and it's free unless you pay for the next step up.
In order to do on the iPhone version of it, because I remember when I had MyFitnessPal like 6 years ago, everything was free.
Everything, yeah.
And now it's like to get the same functionality.
You
I
can't
do so
scan
now.
a barcode anymore and have it pull it without paying, but
Now I've got also like a separate little. This has nothing to do with our winter trip. I'm sorry.
yeah, what are you talking
Our
about?
separate little like a separate notebook next to my planner on my table in my kitchen. That's now one side of the column is calories, and then the other side is protein, and I add those up throughout the day,
Nice.
and I just physically track those.
I will say there
Paper
is
pen.
there is times that I've found that I'm more productive and whatnot the more I do on the digital side, productivity wise. But when I want to be creative or if I'm trying to map things out, I still really do enjoy journals and physical writing, which is exactly why I was very adamant and we were very adamant when we put together the OV 100 Mile Challenge, was that we were sending them a physical book to read through, to add notes to study from, and also the training program itself. Tyler, catch me if I'm wrong, you added a poster essentially this time that has the training calendar on it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. So
we'll have it all essentially, whether you want to do it digitally or not. I've built training programs in Excel sheets. I've done them on paper and whatever works best for you. But anyways, back on subject here,
So
Joe.
yeah, back to the trip.
trip?
But still,
We were talking about a
still
trip.
on the topic of food and water. I did not protect my water bottles good enough, and 2 of my water bottles were frozen before we went to bed. Like they were just completely frozen.
So obviously you put those in your sleeping bag with you to get them better,
To
right?
cool down.
No,
It's too hot.
to warm up the water, right?
No, so I did end up a little dehydrated by the end of the trip because it was just hard to get enough water when it's that cold and your water freezes that fast.
Yeah.
So-
Quick, you can, and what I've done a lot when I melt in my smart water bottle like that is I'll put them next to the fire. And Derek learned this. You can have them inches away from that, and it will start to melt the plastic and misshapen your water bottle. So it's really easy to do that. But water is a huge thing. Brigham has got to the point where he just packs in a crap ton of water. If I'm bringing my titanium stove, I will sit there and melt the water. It gives me like a chore to do the whole night, which I get sick of, but I still do it that way. Because, you're drinking a lot of water in the winter. It's usually dry. It's usually windy. You're usually breathing hard. So you're still using a lot of water, even if you don't realize it. And then it's very, very difficult to unfreeze a bottle. I mean, it's almost impossible. And then to melt snow, it's a massive chore. In fact, I think his name was, it might be John Conti or someone. He was talking about a trip that he went on, or he ran out of gas, essentially, if I'm remembering right, because he was thinking he could melt snow, out there. And it's very, very inefficient to melt snow on trail. The only reason I do it is because I've got an infinite supply of fuel in a titanium stove. If I'm using a gas canister, I will never plan on melting snow out there because it gets so hard and it's so inefficient. So
and two, I was melting snow in the morning, like for my breakfast, and the morning, right at sunup is the absolute coldest point in the whole night, and my pot would not stay warm enough, like on the tops and the sides, to even melt the snow with the gas.
You want to know the best, man, getting off on a tangent here, but the best thing I found to melt snow when you've got a frozen water bottle, don't try this at home, it's just what I do, is I put a little bit of water in the bottom of my pot, and then I stick my water bottle inside of that pot. It keeps it from melting the bottom. I might not run my stove on maximum heat, but like if you put on a low setting, that water in the bottom of the pot keeps the plastic from melting, and then can unfreeze some of that water, but it's still super inefficient.
Not let your water get frozen to do that.
Yeah, you still have to. It is your lifeline to keep at least some water unfrozen.
Yep.
Out there to even be able to do that, or so on and so forth. But all right, so it's time to go to bed. We kick all these guys out of our shelter, and we've got two storylines here. Number one, I'm sitting there smoothing out my pad spot, getting it all nice. I'm beating the snow down, the frozen snow, getting it all smooth. I look over and Joe's like almost asleep. And I'm like, you going to sleep right there, dude? There's like a 2-foot hole under your shoulder.
I wanted to get into my bag, making sure everything was nice and heated up.
You had a stove in the tent.
Last time was so bad. It was honestly like a terrible trip for me. Straight up. And I know it was a terrible trip for you,
He tried to quit. We had to pay him a little more after that.
Yeah. Last time was such a bad trip that like everything, like all the trauma of it, like I was always stressed for last time, because last time you guys were like, hey guys, let's do 5,000 videos. And I'm like, I have not skied before. Like that was the conversation last year. And then this year it was like, hey, let's do 5,000 videos. And I'm like, well, last time I froze to death. So all the trauma of the previous trip was like on me on this one. So all I was doing was just making sure that I got in there, and I had I brought like 8 of those like those hand warmer things that Tyler had built up, and I got a few from like when we had a winter trip that we had to cancel the day after or the day before, and then I was like, okay, I got these ones. And then I had a few from this
so
time.
You made me like pack 8. In an 8-person teepee, the titanium stove, the ground sheets, so that you could pack in 20 hand warmers.
I had like a bunch of camera stuff. There wasn't room in my pack, if you remember that. I wouldn't have minded carrying more weight. That wouldn't have bothered me. But
Did
yeah,
you bring
I had
some tape so you could like tape them all over.
I had all those hand warmers and those foot warmers. I put them on my feet.
Just stick to his body.
That's right. I had those on my feet like before I got into the bag, and I threw a couple in the bag with me, and then I was like, okay, I'm warm. Let's hope this will last throughout the night. And last time, first my feet were absolutely frozen. So thankfully with the hot tent and stuff, like. Because last time I stepped into the ground and snow got into my boot, and
the top of the boot
froze my feet.
I think we should talk about that right there. When you said last time your feet froze, and this time because of the hot tent, your feet didn't freeze.
Right.
So it's important to point out that once everybody falls asleep, that hot tent goes to whatever the air temperature is. It turns off, and the tent is now whatever the outside temperature is. So
that's why I got in my bag.
So
while
what
the
difference is with the wood burning stove and the heat, you're able to warm your feet up to very warm, but before getting into bed, and that's the key.
Yeah.
And
That you missed the time before, where you went to bed with very cold feet, which are very hard, and you have to be well practiced in warming your feet up without a heat source.
It took hours
So
to get my feet to where I could feel
So
them.
it wasn't the fact that you were in a warm tent all night that your feet stayed warm. It was the fact that you were able to warm your feet up before getting in your sleeping bag and going to bed.
Yeah. And that was the plan.
And the fact
it went
that
according to plan.
the hot tent
Thankfully.
allowed you to dry out anything that got wet.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
very
forgiving.
Key. Yeah.
Because there's two ways to look at it. You either got to be super preemptive and proactive to keep everything dry, to keep your water from freezing. You got to, all those aspects. Or there's the reactive side, which is if you have a hot tent, which again, this is like, you need to be familiar with your gear, everything. You can't rely solely on this, right? You can't just do stupid things and rely on it. But the hot tent is pretty dang forgiving because you can dry your boots out, you can dry your socks out, you can dry any gear out, you can melt water, and so it's a big, I don't want to call it a safety net, but it's much more forgiving than if you did not have that option. Where you want to do everything you can to make sure your socks don't get wet. You want to do everything you can to make sure your water doesn't get frozen up. So
Yeah.
So Joe,
Well, the other aspect of that. So it was last time my feet froze and I was up until 2 a.m. And I was looking at my clock every once in a while. I was just listening to
looking at his
podcasts.
phone the whole time.
It was 2 a.m. by the time my feet felt relatively normal and I was able to go to sleep last time. And then I woke up at 5 a.m. and I just felt cold. And I was like, I think it's having made 12 videos about how not your pad will make you frozen. And then I was like, I think that's what's going on. So I was feeling the pad, and the pad was freezing cold the last time we had gone on this trip. So last time, whatever was in the ground had slowly reached its way into my body by 5 a.m. And then I was absolutely frozen cold. So
yeah, it's the opposite, but you're
I got 3 hours of sleep last time with just terrible bookends, and so this time it was okay.
It's a lot of justifying.
I got my feet good. I got everything good. I'm going into my bag, and if I wake up at 5 a.m., at least I went to bed comfortable. But this time I had a different pad. So
even though you were on a bowling ball sized hole,
I didn't feel it at all. By the way,
it's funny. It's a testament.
That's what we were talking about before.
Deep sleep.
Okay, so you were leveling.
I leveled out my spot perfectly level because I know 2 to 5 minutes of getting my spot better is going to pay off massive dividends for the 8 to 10 hours I'm in my sleeping bag. Joe climbs right in and he put his shoulder was in this hole that his feet had dug while he was sitting by the fire, and I'm like, why don't you scoot a little farther away from the fire and level out that spot and be more comfortable? And he was just like, I'm in my bag. I'm good, So I'm like, all right, we'll see. But so how did you sleep, Joe? You're on a new pad, the Oblivion pad. I don't remember what changes you did sleeping bag wise, but how did you sleep?
I slept fine.
Slept fine.
I slept
It's the
perfectly
Oblivion
fine.
pad with foam underneath it. We did some foam under them because the Oblivion isn't a winter. It's not designed for winter.
Did you have 2 foams?
I
just one?
had
He had a roll up the cheapest roll up Thermarest.
Oh, he did.
Reflective one
I
that I sent him with.
I see.
and a foam.
So it probably that
I also
probably
had
had
the
somewhere
8
between
inch.
1 and 2 R
Yeah.
value. Probably 1.5 would be a safe estimate on that particular piece.
I also had the 1/8 foam pads
yeah.
underneath me. So, and then the reflector thing, I guess. So there's definitely a lot of layers underneath the Oblivion pad, but it was just one more layer than what I had when I had the old pad. And this time I did not feel like it was going to... It felt like maybe when I got up in the morning and I was feeling the pad, I was like, maybe in 1 more hour it would have started to do that.
Dip down to -5 or
Yeah,
-10.
but I was in my bag for hours at that point, so...
It's a significantly warmer pad.
Yeah.
In the field, you will absolutely notice how much warmer it is.
It's significantly warmer, but also I didn't feel the need to have to level out all my stuff like you did, and the reason was, and this is a good way to plug our product, I guess, but what I found out when I had used it the first time on the Highline trip was there was bumps and stuff, but just the way that you guys had to design the pad, it's pretty good at displacing whatever is underneath you. So even though yeah, you're on a rock or something like that, because of the way like the pad inflates or whatever, the baffles
quilting
or whatever.
versus vertical
baffles. Whatever it is about it, I don't know what it is about it. It just like displaces that, and you still get like
some gaps.
Yeah, you can still get like
I-beam design,
a pretty darn level like feeling when I'm on the pad. So good job, by the way, with that.
Did you listen to the podcast? Because we
did.
described that a little bit.
Yeah.
So what you're saying?
You couldn't find the word displacement, and it was funny.
All right, it's on the podcast now. I got to keep this rolling because I've got a heart out here.
Sorry.
So you slept much better, had a much better time.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have to pack out in the middle of the night because my valve was broken from Kansas State or whoever does our testing. And
they take the valve out when they do the testing.
And then they just
so you
glued it
took a
back
pad
in
that
and sent to
had a intentionally defaulted.
had glue all over it. Anyways, Caden, you slept in a very traditional setup where you had just a 40th tent, a one-person 40th tent. And take us through your sleep system and how you slept.
So I bought an Oblivion right before the trip. And so I had the Oblivion, and I had 2 of the closed cell foam pads.
The 1/8 inch, yep.
Mm-hmm. And then I had a -15 Summit. And I was really surprised because honestly, going into the trip, I grew up winter camping. I think I started when I was 4, but I haven't been camping in 2 years, and especially winter camping in a lot longer than that. And so I was kind of worried that I was going to be cold, but I was pleasantly surprised that once I got into the sleeping bag, my fingers and toes were actually burning because of how warm it was. So that was super nice. Like the feeling when you have cold fingers and you put them in warm water. So the only times that I wasn't warm at night was when I would roll over and there was like all the snow drift on top that would suddenly be underneath me.
Because we got to talk about the amount of condensation, and that's what you're talking about, right?
I slept
Exactly.
with my sunglasses on. Yeah.
It was bad. So my perspective of this was that I wanted to sleep on my back, which I rarely do. But for some reason, I was craving sleeping on my back. But I'd sleep on my back, and there was so much condensation on the inside of the tent, and then the wind would blow, and it would shake it.
The wind was blowing hard.
And it would just drop like a face full of frost right onto your face. Even with I had a Loft-Tech balaclava on, so like a lot of my face is covered. And it was so bad that I could not sleep on my back because I just get this face full of frost every few minutes, and so I had to sleep on my sides the whole night. So what you're describing is that you'd get frost and stuff all over your bag, and then you'd roll over, and you'd have to, and you just feel a little bit cold for a minute after the roll over, and
then it would warm up really fast. I also had the balaclava, but the thing that was kind of interesting is I am a side sleeper, and so sometimes I'd roll over, but I didn't bring a pillow, so I just stuffed my Nova Pro inside my jacket.
They're free. We literally give them away for free every day of the year.
I should definitely grab one. And so between the Nova Pro in my bag and then the mummy liner and then the balaclava and then the Summit, every time I would roll over, I just kind of got lost. And
the mummy liner would be a fight. I feel like I know we sell sleeping bag liners, but I pretty much don't use them. I haven't for a long time, and that would feel like a fight to me. Inside of there.
I kind of got lost in everything, and every once in a while I'd have to find up or find the entrance to everything again. But I stayed super, super warm, so it was really good.
Good. Tyler, how was sleeping with your sunglasses?
So, yeah, it was just the conditions that we were in just made it really frosty, and any breath into your tent was going to cause some condensation, and then as windy as it was just going to blow back on you,
Freeze and fall back on your face.
I'm a 100% back sleeper. I don't sleep on my side or my stomach ever.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And so, I was I got to do something about this. So at first I slept with my hat on my face. I had the balaclava on because I was sleeping in a 15-degree Summit and I had a 15-degree top quilt. That those are the two that I own, and so those are what I brought. And it was a little warm.
Yeah.
It was a little warm at times.
I had the same system actually,
but
so I couldn't find my 30 top quilt.
Yeah, but it works really nice to get into the summit and then just have the top quilt attached to the pad like normal. So like you can always take the top quilt off if you get too hot or whatever. But I had the balaclava on and I kept getting frost in my face. So essentially I ended up just like cinching the top quilt so tight that it was just like a little eye opening. And I had my sunglasses on, and I did that by like midnight. And then I didn't wake up till 8 in the morning. It was great.
We joke often, those of us that are dads in the room, that we get way more sleep on trail, sleeping in the backcountry than we get at home sometimes. I've had a pretty good run the past few months, but it's always an ebb and flow, it seems like. And Tyler, you've had some fun times with one of your daughters, just keeping her to sleep. And
I have a daughter who won't sleep, and I'm remodeling a house, so I don't sleep unless I'm on trail right now.
Well, if you need an excuse to get out there, you can say it's work related and go take a nap somewhere.
Some R&D somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so I slept phenomenal throughout the night. Brigham, any comments on your setup or?
Just that it was probably a little too warm. I had a 15-degree summit with a 30-degree top quilt inside. But for me, it was overkill.
Brigham's a real warm sleeper.
Just too warm. Yeah, I was like sweating when I went to bed, and I did have my stove on, so that's why I was sweating before I went to bed. But yeah, I woke up several times like uncomfortably hot, but didn't want to do anything about it because I just wanted to get back to sleep.
Yeah, I've used that exact setup Brigham just talked about when we were camping at -15 last year. So we were 14 degrees or whatever hotter than that. 13 degrees. So yeah, I could see like that adding those layers like we're just describing it's one of my favorite ways to camp. So what I would tell people, if you've not yet bought any sleep system, probably my favorite combination of what you could buy that would cover all ranges of camping would be to buy a 30-degree top quilt. So that's what you can use throughout the summer months. And then buy a 15-degree summit. And then that's what you can use in some of those shoulder seasons if you need to, when you're getting underneath the top quilt. And then in the winter seasons, you just layer those up and you can go literally to -15 degrees with that combo. At least we have. So that's one of the best ways. I mean, you can also do it like Tyler does, where he's got a 15-degree quilt, 15-degree summit, or some combinations of that. But having one top quilt and one sleeping bag can provide you a massive range of use case.
I basically just have the summit for my wife. And then for the snow trip, right? So I'm totally comfy in a 15-degree top quilt from February to November in non-snow, non-high wind trips. So I feel like the 15-degree top quilt is the most versatile, but I do end up hot in the summer.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
All right, you want to talk about how you almost killed us real quick?
Oh, no, we can skip that. No, so right before bed, I got my pad all out there. Everything's level. I get into my bag. I turn off my headlamp. And within like 10 seconds after I had turned off my headlamp, there's a nice gust of wind that came through, like a real doozy. And so I'm laying there for probably 60 seconds. And I'm like, why is my nose and throat burning? What is going on? I'm sitting there, I'm breathing. I'm like, it's getting worse. I think it's getting worse. So I literally go to reach for my headlamp, and Joe clicks his headlamp on from the other side of the shelter. And all I see is just smoke. I don't see him at all. I just see this. And I'm like, what the heck? So I kick on mine, and the flue with that gust of wind had blown all the way closed, and it had just backfilled our tent in 1 single minute with just a ton of smoke. And Joe thought it was exciting.
A couple, took like 20 minutes for the air to clear throughout that tent.
Did Joe get out of his sleeping bag to help vent?
Not at all. I was afraid because I was like, I had both my headphones in. I had heard rustling. Like, I thought Tayson had left the tent and came back in. That's what it sounded like to me. I wasn't 100% sure if Tayson was actually in the tent when I had clicked on that headlamp. Thankfully, he was there because I don't know what I would have done. I don't
Definitely
know.
wouldn't have gone out and done anything.
Well,
I mean,
probably
there's
just would've
takers and
ran out
there's
of the
givers
tent.
in this world.
It's on fire. I'm out of here.
I have no idea how to use the hot tent, like the stove, so I would have been totally lost. Like something's
just-
burning.
Asphyxiated yourself to a peaceful sleep.
I would have probably. I would
get out of the
if
tent.
Tayson was not in there. I would have probably ran to the door and opened the door.
Okay,
That's probably what I would have done.
It's a good plan.
But yeah, that was a scary moment for a second there. But yeah.
Got better after that.
Yeah. I actually had a good night. I appreciated all the efforts that went into making my trip comfortable. It worked and was not nearly as bad of a trip as last time. So
I think we all enjoyed it. I'm glad it wasn't terrible for you, Joe.
Thank you.
I mean, basically the next morning we got up and put away camp, filmed a little bit more, and then headed out of there. I don't know if there's too much to note there, but really pretty out there. I mean, as always, love getting out there in the winter. It's absolutely stunning views. We had a really interesting scenario too, even when we were setting up camp, where if you looked one direction, it looked like it was stormy and snowing, and it was actively snowing on us. And then you'd flip around the other direction, and it was blue skies. Mm-hmm. And so in the film, when you guys go to watch that, you'll think that we're like filming in two different times of day, but really
yeah, it was just
watch, because you'll see, I think, at least one camera angle where you can see it's almost like a direct line over our head of blue sky and storm coming in, because it was snowing on us with blue skies. And anyways, but it was absolutely gorgeous. We got a few shots out there that were just phenomenal. And yeah, just highly encourage people to get out in the winter months as well. It's easy to get cooped up inside, and you know that eventually catches up to you. Affects your mood, affects your just your body. Like, we're meant to be outside, and so we always start to feel it around the office. You know, January, February, it starts to seem like it builds more, and so it's always good to get out whenever possible. And don't be afraid of winter conditions. Don't be stupid about it. Go in there smart. We have plenty of content out there that will help you significantly, but it's totally doable and can be some of the best trips you'll do all year long. Okay, any last comments? I think that was a fun podcast. It was a fun trip for sure. Make sure you guys do go watch that. If you have any questions for us, you can reach out to the Live Ultralight Podcast at gmail.com. That'll get forwarded on to us. Or you can leave a comment on our YouTube channel, the Live Ultralight Podcast, where we'll answer those in a little bit more real time. But if you have not yet rated the podcast, please go rate the podcast. That does help us grow the podcast and help more people with our mission of connecting them to the vital outdoors, getting them out there more comfortably and more confidently. We're very passionate about doing that. We're very passionate about helping people overcome their fears with knowledge, with gear, and just get out there and enjoy nature. We need it now more than ever. Okay, if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys on a future episode.